Welcome back, listeners, to a new episode of The New Standard on December 18th, 2022. And as always, joining me to my left, what's up, Big Neal?
It's a great day, Lance. It's a great day in Steeler Nation. Everybody is excited. We, of course, are here to discuss, among other things, the Steelers' 24-16 victory over the Carolina Panthers in Charlotte today. The Steelers got, I felt, an excellent all-around performance in most ways throughout this game. A couple things defensively, some hiccups that I'm sure we weren't totally thrilled with, but even for a team that scored 24 points, you would have thought they scored 34, if not more, the way that they played offensively. They were crisp. They executed very well. This was maybe the best performance we've seen out of their offensive line in the last 2 years. And Mitch Trubisky, filling in for injured Kenny Pickett, availed himself very well. I don't think Pickett could, or Trubisky could have played any better. I should be calling him Darnold, not Pickett or Trubisky, as we
Yeah.
heard multiple times in the broadcast. That cracked me up.
Yes,
I apologize
yes,
for
that
the
was
segue.
hilarious.
Yes, Steelers 24, Panthers 16. It's an excellent Sunday, NFL Week 15.
Yeah,
Back
that
to you,
was,
Lance.
that was hilarious. Gumbo was calling him Darnold the
Like
entire
5
game.
times.
And I was like, man, I know I had some cocktails last night, but man, I do think his name is Trubisky. I'm like, I'm bad with names, but I'm not quite that bad. Like I was like, that
He
wait
was
a minute.
pulling a Lance there. You'll correct yourself the second time.
Yes.
He kept doing it. It was
It
like
was
he
like
was either being paid to do that or he had the worst on-air mental block you could possibly have. And I'm not going to rip him for that. I am going to laugh because it's funny. It's not the end of the world. There are people that absolutely go nuts over those kinds of things. Being on air live in front of millions of people, I can't even imagine, is calm and easy. And people make mistakes and they hear about it from everybody. Greg Gumbel is a legend in the field. I think he called a great game today, and he usually calls a great game. It's just funny because it's Mitch Trubisky and Sam Darnold, two last names that are not even remotely similar or common. So
yeah,
those
he
are the
might
two you mix up.
yeah, you might as well just call him Donald Trubisky. I was like, just call him Donald Trubisky. But before we jump into the program, I do want to congratulate Lionel Messi and Argentina on winning the World Cup. Lionel Messi, with the World Cup win, has solidified his claim to being the greatest soccer player of all time.
What
So
sport is
big
this?
up.
Soccer. Okay.
Yes, yes. So big up
Making
to
sure.
Argentina and Lionel Messi for winning the World Cup. Darnold Diskey. That's a good one.
Darnold Diskey.
Uh
I wish I thought of that earlier.
Darnold Diskey. That's a good one. But as always, listeners, if you want to join the experience, you can hit us up on YouTube and do a search for the New Standard and Lance Williams or Neal Coulong, or you can go to a podcast reader or feeder and do a search for the New Standard and Lance Williams or Neal Coulong. In the first segment, Neal, I want you to dig into a little bit deeper. And the first segment of this show is Neal's Game Spill. And the name of this particular episode of the show is The Steelers Ground and Pound the Panthers to a Victory. And this game was really old school. They really leaned on their offensive line, the performance of that running game to go on the road and get them a victory. And I think that's the formula for offensive success for this football team. Give me your thoughts.
I think this game was exactly what the Steelers envisioned their offense to be this season, possibly beyond that. It was run heavy. It was diverse, however. It was not a straight run 12 consecutive times and take what you can get. They were able to move the chains. They were able to get ahead on early downs. They threw successfully when they needed to. They didn't take a whole lot of shots down the field, but they connected on the one I can think of at least. Maybe they took another one that I'm not thinking of, and they protected the ball. They were able to do, I think, what they have been trying to do since training camp, which is set up more of a risk-adverse offense that can maintain possession and win closer games against anybody. Now, whether we agree with that philosophy, another story, another day, another time.
I
But
don't.
for the personnel that they have, it probably is the smartest thing for them to do. They don't have a high passing offense. They if we're even gonna judge this mid-season, they traded away their only veteran big play guy, who is somebody that they moved inside anyway. They were trying to run the ball constantly this season. They wanted to be a ground and pound team. Today was the day I feel it stands out more than the others, and they were actually able to successfully implement that and then dominate in doing it. They sucked the life out of Carolina for pretty much that entire game. I know that the score ended what it was. They traded a few at the end. Marcus Allen did whatever Marcus Allen did. They wouldn't have got that last field goal without that. That might be a whole other show. I'm not sure if Marcus Allen is okay. I think they need to sit him down with somebody. I have no clue what he was doing. I've never seen anybody do that before. You know what it made me think of, Lance? I'm sorry to segue on this. Do you remember Any Given Sunday?
I do.
When Steamin' Willie Beeman gets knocked after the big hit and he's going and flirting with the cheerleaders on the sideline. That's what it looked like. It was like, what the hell are you doing? Get your ass back to the side. I've never seen anything like that. The right penalty to call. I don't think you could avoid that if you're an official. He's in their huddle.
And then he protested. And then he protested.
He protested because he knows he's going to get cut. It was that egregious of a thing to have done. His job, they probably told him on the sidelines, you're done. You're getting a plane back, and that's it. You're out. Clean out your locker. We'll make a big thing out of this, but the reality is it was a great game from the Steelers all around for what we could reasonably expect. We know that there are issues defensively on this team. We saw plenty of them, in fact, among the secondary. Again, a trend that I felt was going in a better direction a couple weeks ago seems to be slanted and going downhill again. It's something they're going to have to figure out. Whether they're playing for the playoffs or not. Now, as far as I know, they are technically not eliminated from the postseason as of yet, but it's going to come pretty close to that, I'm sure. I don't think they even have control over their own destiny anymore. Moving forward, their secondary will have continued problems playing the way that they are. A lot of man. They really want to stay within that scheme. They're getting better pressure. I thought they pressured well today. Larry Ogunjobi played a hell of a game, I thought, top to bottom, probably a bit more earlier than later. We saw Cam produce. We saw TJ Watt get another sack. He was in on a few plays. Might have been the most impressive move that Alex Highsmith has had in his young career, splitting the two tight ends to make that play at the goal line. Great goal line defense from the Steelers. I thought the front seven played a very complete game. Something we have not seen from them the last couple weeks. Now we're going to factor in the quality of the opponent and blah, 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 blah. I don't know. Nameless gray faces. The Steelers executed very well today, I felt, overall on both sides of the ball, with some issues in their secondary that they're going to need to get fixed. But we saw a lot of very good things today. I anticipate watching it again with an all-22 perspective. We're going to be more impressed with a lot of the play that we saw. An excellent game. And I really think the Steelers hoped they could get to this point perhaps earlier in the season than they did. But you can tell this is the type of team that they wanted to build to play this season. And they've been drafting to do. Things went very well for them overall. I'd imagine Mike Tomlin is going to be very happy on the plane on the way home, simply because they got it. At the very least, we saw at a point this season what they really wanted to do. We see what their identity is, and they executed it very well. Hats off to an offensive line that we have savagely ripped. Dan Moore did not have a penalty today. I didn't think that was possible. We saw a lot of good things out of that group, and I definitely feel that they deserve the praise that fans are giving them for the performance that they put up.
I want to echo everything you said, but I also want to chime into the point when you said nameless faces,
gray faces. That's a Tomlin.
Of course, I had to get that wrong. With that being said, I mean, I always like to take it from that perspective and not try to nitpick victories. Victories are victories. Had they lost, there would have been ample criticism had they lost. So they should get the kudos when they win. And let me echo some of the things that you said with a couple of numbers before we jump into the second segment of the show. Pickett's Nitpick, and we're going to have some other numbers from this game that we want to highlight. The number 31, the number 21, and the number 68. There were only 31 completed passes in this game. That is absolutely rare in today's football in 2022. I mean, you're talking about 31 completions in a normal game from one quarterback. In this game, you had 31 completions from both guys. I think Trubisky had 17, Darnold had 14. The number 21, a 21 play drive. I think on the broadcast they said that was the longest drive in the last 5 years, which is
second longest drive since 2001. I saw,
which is ridiculous. And the odds of you being able to execute a 21 play drive is just slim to none. Hence that number.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
Drive. I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen that. I mean, I think I've seen an 18 play, maybe a 19, but I've never seen a 20 play
the pure ground and pound, like Bettis days, maybe. It may be high teens, but 21 with only one penalty. And Johnson's penalty was stupid too. You really wish that didn't happen. Overall, they picked up. I mean, literally, it was like 4 or 5 yards down the field, and they started at the 9 or whatever it was. Just a phenomenal drive. I mean,
we don't need to call that drive the carding. They could have carded them for that drive. The card. You can get a card for the drive. Hey, you
21 and over only. The Steelers are in that club.
21 and over only. And the last number I wanted to point out is 68. Steelers ran 68 plays to Carolina's 43. Dominant. I mean, and Steelers Wire, let me post that here. Thank you, Steelers Wire, for hopping on. Said the Steelers gained 106 total yards on that drive, which means you're never going to see a 21 play, 106 yard drive. You're never going to see that. And I want to give a big up to my uncle who hopped on the program. Big up, Uncle Ruben. Thank you for hopping on to the program. Thank you, sir. I mean, when are you going to see a 21 play, 106 yard drive again? Ever?
On the NFL weekend in which we saw the largest comeback of all time. We had an internal civil war at work over what to call it. The biggest regular season comeback in NFL history. And at the same time, for those who are watching, the Jacksonville Jaguars walked off the Dallas Cowboys with a pick 6 in overtime. The Cowboys were up 10 in the fourth quarter of this game. What a day. Oh, this is fantastic. The Jaguars are my quiet adopted team just because I love Doug Peterson. I love Trevor Lawrence. To see them beat the Cowboys the way that they have, and after the Cowboys should have lost to Houston last week, this is just phenomenal. Dallas is not nearly the team they think they are. It's enjoyable. I really enjoyed this weekend, Lance. Sorry.
If you root for other teams to lose, let's jump
into you guys?
Yeah, I mean,
root for a lot of teams to lose all the time.
There was a post. I'm gonna jump into this from C-Mac, and he tweeted because I want you to jump into your Twitter tornado.
I just DM'd him over a side argument that was going on
Twitter. But let me ask you this: in the Pickett's Nitpick segment, we saw Trubisky play very well. You saw the ground game do very well. You saw them play to their identity. On a short week, Steelers play again on Christmas Eve in the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception. Is this a Trubisky start on Saturday? Are they trying to get Pickett back, or are they trying to give Pickett a little bit of rest? We saw him with the new helmet to address concussions. Is it take your time, young man, get back, get right? Trubisky looked good. We can just throw Trubisky out here for the weekend. How do you handle this?
As usual, there are two answers here. One, there's what Mike Tomlin is going to tell us, which is a combination of practice participation will be our guide. He's going to follow through in the protocol, and Lance is gone. 2 is the stuff we don't know that happens. We don't know what their plan is. We're not going to know what their plan is. There's a cottage industry of radio hosts, podcasters, and bloggers who will write all about the things they think they know. The reality is the Steelers do not give up that information, and they're not going to. We're not going to know until Tomlin says something or we see one of them walk out to the huddle for the opening drive who the quarterback is going to be. What I can say right now is Pickett sustained 2 hits that resulted in him having concussion-like symptoms. See how far I'm going to not call it a concussion? He has concussion-like symptoms, and he was ruled out for this game. He's had 2 of those in 7 weeks. A concussion, hits to the head, we'll call it that, doesn't heal instantaneously. And the more of them you get, the longer it tends to take to recover. That's science. That's not my opinion. It seems like a short week now, if he wasn't cleared to play by Saturday, odds wouldn't be in favor of him starting.
That's what I'm thinking.
You also have the obvious long-term effects that you have to be concerned with. Pickett's 24, which isn't the youngest player in the league, but certainly not the oldest either. He's got 4 years left in his contract, 3 years left in his contract, and a 5th-year team option, or 4th year left for his team option remaining. Do you need him to play this week? I don't know. You would prefer it. He's your starting quarterback. Trubisky availed himself very well. He led the team well. Didn't make mistakes. Today, well, he had 2 passes I thought were pretty bad, but he used to have 2 passes a drive that were pretty bad. So he's making substantial improvement. You aren't going to feel bad about Trubisky next week for what we know right now. You shouldn't have to feel bad. He's done a good job of rising to the challenge that he's now facing. Does that mean that he'll start? Again, go back to 1. We have no idea. We don't know. There's a bunch of people that are going to tell you that they know, but they don't know, okay? You might get the leaked report on Friday of who's going to start, but as far as I know, Mike didn't address it in postgame today. He'll speak again on Tuesday. He might say something then. We don't know. It's going to be the first question that's asked. He didn't have any other injuries today, so I would imagine he's going to address the situation, and I'm going to imagine it's going to be something to do with Pickett's status in concussion protocol and them wanting to let practice participation be their guide. What that means is we're going to have the guys practice, and we're not going to tell you because we don't want the Raiders to know. We're fine with you asking us questions because we can shoot down your question all day. We'll let you know when we have to let you know, and that's not right now. So I don't know. Long-winded way of saying I don't know. And that's not that I'm stupid or anybody else is stupid. It's that they're not going to tell you, and they're the only ones that matter. They do this song and dance all the time. We won't know. But as it sits now, I would prefer Pickett be them wanting to err on the side of overcaution with Pickett, just because I don't. All games matter, especially with a rookie quarterback who still has to develop. I would love Pickett to be 100% healthy and out there. If he's not that, he doesn't need to be out there. And that's not, I have faith in Trubisky. That's just very simply protect the kid. Let's not let his competition take over. He wants to make money. He wants to get paid. He wants to win. Totally get it. I want those things too. I can't do it though. He physically might not be able to do it. And if he can't, he shouldn't. There's a lot riding on it. So let's let practice participation be our guide, and we'll see what happens and see how they're feeling about him for this week leading into this next game.
And Felicia says it best. Tomlin's language is a language in and of itself. You could go to Pitt and you could study Tomlin. That's a language. He says a lot of nothing at times. Makes it sound good and let you interpret it for whatever it means. But when you conjugate verbs in a certain way, they're Tomlinisms and they mean certain things. But here's the one thing I can absolutely guarantee answer about who will not be the next starting quarterback. And that's Mason Rudolph. That ship has sailed. It's been sunk. It's never going to happen. Mason Rudolph is never going to start again for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That has absolutely been settled. And it's interesting because Tomlin said something that we said, and I saw some comments on Twitter. We got knocked a little bit for our comments, and he basically said Mason Rudolph hasn't played quarterback this year. Regardless of what you think, he hasn't taken any live snaps in a game that counts this year, which would put the Steelers offense at a deficit. But let me ask you this though, Neal. What were you guys beefing about on Twitter because you said that you were in a little bit of a Twitter dust up and going back and forth with some Pittsburgh brass, so to speak.
First off, yeah, I mean, if we need to get into the specifics of it, David Todd and Alan Saunders, who are both two great guys, fine gentlemen, excellent Twitter follows. I strongly recommend them and the content that they produce. We got into something of a debate, and I know that David has stood firmly in the camp of Mitch Trubisky for a while, and as anybody who's listened to this program more than once knows, I haven't always. The conversation today kind of led to the discussion, which has to be happening. What's Trubisky's future in Pittsburgh? And the way that I look at this, it really kind of comes down to the fact that you now have your starting quarterback. I don't think anybody's questioning that, in Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett has sustained two things that strongly resemble concussions, but I'm not calling them concussions, in 7 weeks. You've got an injury-prone quarterback. Whether it's not a character flaw, it doesn't mean that he's a bad person. It just means he gets hit in the head and he's unable to play. You need to make your backup quarterback a top 20 roster position. That's my opinion. What I mean by that is you're going to have to pay the market value for a starting quarterback with a backup quarterback with starting experience. You pay a premium on top of market to sign a guy like that. Trubisky got more or less something like that this offseason with the Steelers. He signed a 2-year deal. Next year, he is due a base salary of $8 million. That, not something Alan Saunders agrees with, but in my interpretation of the market, it's really not that far off. It's more or less what Mariota got. It didn't work out so well for him. But you've also, next year, you've got Jimmy Garoppolo probably coming on the market. You have potentially Baker Mayfield coming on the market. There are higher level quarterbacks than Trubisky that are going to come onto the market. That drives the price up for everybody. So $8 million to me as I sit, not my favorite price for my backup quarterback, but you can knock that down a little bit on an extension. The point is, you really want to keep Trubisky as your backup. And I've ripped Trubisky as a starter all year, all offseason. I was on a work call when I saw the tweet that the Steelers signed Trubisky, and I had to hang up. I was that livid about it. Not a fan of Mitch Trubisky, the starter. I'm not making that up either. That's a true story. It's legend in my old place of employment. I'm like, oh, God, swear word, swear word, swear word. The Steelers signed Trubisky. I got to go. Click. It's exactly what happened. As a backup, you can definitely do a lot worse, certainly for what we saw today. Continuity, very important. The Steelers have prided themselves in continuity among their backups. When they had Ben, it was very important that the backup, whose job really is to kind of help prepare the starter above anything else, and when they need to play, they have to step up and play. It's kind of people say it's a great job. It really isn't. When you have to do the job, you got to be at a pretty good level. We saw Trubisky play at a pretty good level today. They didn't ask him to do a whole lot, but he did well what they asked him to do. It's what you need out of a backup. If he is okay preparing Pickett, the established starter, having him on the ready for a quarterback who sustained two things that look a lot like concussions in 7 weeks, having one on the ready that can step in and play in an offense that he knows with players who know him is a good idea. That's a good investment, especially with what we're talking about here is the difference between probably $8 and $5 million. Okay, so $3 million. Yeah. If you can make a Super Bowl champion out of a $3 million increase, you are the greatest who's ever lived. And if the Steelers can do that, if you're going to tell me not paying Trubisky the $3 million over the market that they're going to have to pay for a backup quarterback, that's going to be the difference between them being 6-11 next year and them being 11-6 and Super Bowl champions. Let's be Super Bowl champions, okay? I just have a real tough time thinking $3 million makes that significant of a difference. So the argument kind of comes down to whether or not you understand the size of the money involved that you are allowed to spend, how the position is paid throughout the rest of the league, versus how much do you not like Mitch Trubisky and how much do you think $3 million is worth on a $220 million salary cap. Math
Yeah.
tells me it's not really worth all that much. If you want to give me $3 million, I will gladly make hay out of it, okay? Feel free to Venmo me $3 million if you want to do that. For an NFL team, may as well be changing the couch, okay? It's not significant. Math tells me that. You were talking 1% of the cap, not significant. So it's a premium. It means something to Mitch Trubisky, sure. If Trubisky, and if I was his agent, I would say, here's what we would go back with. They don't want to pay you $8 million. Your contract, they're contracted to pay you $8 million. So we can tell them to, kiss our foot and move on if we want. We don't have to move anywhere. If they say they aren't comfortable with that, what we say is, okay, give us 2 years, $14 million. It's a little bit less than 8 this year. It's another year on the contract, so we don't have to do this changing teams thing every year. And we make up the difference over 2 years. They're probably not going to go for that, but it's a good starting point. We land on 12 and a half. I think that's probably about right. Okay. 6.5 million. That's probably going to be the market rate. Jimmy is going to get way more than that. Baker is going to get way more than that. Seattle is going to pay Geno Smith a lot more than that. Plus, there are 7 guys in the first 3 rounds of this draft who are going to go. Okay. There's not much of a market for Trubisky. The greatest leverage that he has is within the team that he is currently on. They know him. He knows them. He's got experience with them. He's made starts with them. It's the best move for both sides for him as a backup. And nobody, mind you, Lance, has been more anti-Mitch Trubisky, the starter, than me. Nobody.
No, you have. You definitely have. Okay. You are a Mitch hater, that's for sure. But he's earned it.
To be honest, he has. He played really well today. I gave him credit for that. Yes. I savagely ripped him in a couple games when he deserved it. Last week.
Yeah. You've been fair.
Last week, he made a couple throws. It's great. He turned the ball over twice in the red zone and 3 times overall. And he even played the whole game.
Yes.
So I don't want to hear. Overall, you don't want him to be your starter. But
no, not at all.
If you are not on this team with next year, a second-year quarterback who's already sustained multiple concussions and runs the ball frequently, if you aren't backing that up with a veteran, you're telling your team you're not trying. Because what's going to happen? Do you want Tyler Huntley starting for you? That's who the Ravens have backing up Lamar Jackson, a running quarterback. Huntley sucks, okay? It's plain and obvious. I don't know if you watched him last night. He's terrible. He can't do anything. Do you want to clutch your pearls and save 3% on your salary cap and have what should be a critically important position to a competitive team handled by Lance Coulong? Is that really what you want?
No. Well, my arm is good, though.
Good.
I do have some accuracy within 20 yards to the boundary.
Okay, so you're Tyler Huntley.
Yeah, exactly.
He makes $2.5 million. Do you want to save that kind of money? And this is Double H's point. Quantitative measurements are purely relative when comparing absurdly high numbers. What's the difference between $2.5 million and $6 million on the salary cap? Zip. It really isn't. What's the difference in the market? That quarterback is Mitch Trubisky versus Tyler Huntley. Okay, which one would you rather have as your backup? Honestly,
yeah, I'd rather
do you need
have
to save
Mitch
that
Trubisky.
Money? Do you really think that money is going to be the difference in Baltimore of them extending Lamar or not? No, it's not. If they can't pony up $4 million, you don't want to. You're doing it wrong. And I am far from an accounting major. Okay, I'm just saying you know the market, you know the price that you want to pay for certain things. It's not that big of a deal to throw on a $2 or $3 million premium to keep the quarterback that you know, that you're comfortable with. You have all of his medicals. You know who he is as a person. He's dealt with some adversity. He's dealt with some success. You know exactly what you're getting from him. There's a lot of peace of mind if that's backing up the guy that is going to sneeze and get a concussion moving forward. Okay?
Yeah.
It's a valuable thing that is worth $3 million versus what? And one of the arguments that came back against it was, well, would you rather have Gardner Minshew for $1 million or Trubisky for $8 million? I'd love to have Gardner Minshew for $1 million.
But you can't get
You know who
Gardner
wouldn't?
Minshew for.
Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, you
He's
can't
not
get
playing for $1
Gardner
million.
Minshew for $1 million.
It's stupid. You don't
That's
understand the market. You don't understand what you're talking about. To say nothing of the fact that Minshew's on a rookie contract. He's not even a veteran.
Yeah, you can't.
Pay-wise, he's not a veteran.
Yeah, I mean, you can't.
It's apples and oranges. You don't understand what you're talking about. Just stop. I can't stand that.
I mean, as a former coach, of course, not on a professional level, but one of the things in coaching is you want to minimize uncertainty. And the one thing you do with Mitch Trubisky is you minimize the level of uncertainty with him if you bring him back as a backup, because he knows your system. You know him. You know what throws he likes, what he likes to do. I mean, you know the player. From a player perspective, as a backup, he probably gives you the best option. But I want to give a big up to Robert Cotting. He proposed a hypothetical that we're going to ask at the end of the show. But I want to jump into some offensive numbers that stand out from this game. Steelers ran the ball 45 times. That's another number that jumps out. They ran it 45 times for 156, 3.5 yards a carry for 3 touchdowns. And I think I had posted on Twitter, had they had a game this year where they ran for 2 touchdowns, because I would say no, because they haven't had a game, I think, where they scored 3 offensive touchdowns.
No, I'm too depressed over the season to look that up, but if they've scored 3 touchdowns in a game, it hasn't been more than like once or twice. I probably lost.
Yeah, I don't think so. Another number that jumps out, because they talked about it quite often during the broadcast, the Steelers were 12 of 16 on third down, converting at 75%.
And I'll bet their average to go on that was like 4 yards. I mean, they got ahead early. You know, the numbers, Lance, the rushing numbers don't look what it felt like.
No,
in that game.
No.
You know,
it doesn't.
It's the Harrison Warren. Neither of them came close to 4 yards a carry. Najee 24 for 86. Warren was 11 for 38. They ran a lot better than that. It felt like. Sims cracked off a nice run. I'm not sure what they were trying to do otherwise. You got a conversion for Derek Watt. Deontay Johnson ran. I thought he came close to breaking the play that he got. It seemed like they dominated more on the ground than the numbers.
Yeah, it felt like when they wanted to run it,
just kind of gave up at the end. I think maybe Carolina tightened up a little bit more. Through 3 quarters, though, the Steelers were well in control of this game.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like when they wanted to run it, they could run it. And it felt like they really tapped Carolina out, after that drive, and they scored after the 21-play drive, and they scored the touchdown. Another number on offense I want to point out, and because we got to get this guy some love. Deontay Johnson, 10 targets, 10 receptions, 98 yards, average, of course, 9.8, had a long of 19. George Pickens had another big catch, average 26.5 yards a catch. Kudos to Deontay Johnson after a really bonehead play, but still played a very solid game. Unfortunately, he didn't get into the end zone, but you can clearly see that DJ had a really good game, and his strength is his release, his get off on the line of scrimmage. He really has a unique ability to get open very quickly in his routes.
He's so fluid. He is so balanced, and you could tell on his college tape. I'll die on this hill because I've been saying it for years. I didn't know who Deontay Johnson was when they drafted him. I watched a little bit of tape after they did, and the first thing I thought of immediately was like, I can totally see why the Steelers drafted him. And then after a bit, it was like he is as much a Steeler receiver as we've seen. He is exactly what they look for. He has great balance. He has great coordination. He can run anything against zone. You're not going to be able to cover him there. And his break at the stem, which is whatever move you make after you first get off the line, it is so smooth. He transitions from one speed to another at an exceptional level. He's really good at that. He lacks elite traits, but if he had those, he'd be unstoppable. I mean, I hate, capital H, hate any comparison people have made to him and Antonio Brown. Completely ridiculous for a variety of reasons I'm not going to get into. but Brown had very similar stem ability. Fastest receiver I've ever seen, including Jerry Rice, in and out of his breaks. He destroyed you on his stem. You couldn't keep up with the guy. Johnson is not that, but that's his strength. That's his superpower. Great balance, and he showed it today. He ran some just ridiculous routes on people, and it doesn't always have to be a 60-yard gain for a guy to run a great route. He runs himself open better than just about anybody else in the NFL. That's his talent. That's his skill. Please just get the damn guy in the end zone. I'm so sick and tired of seeing this. It's historically weird that he hasn't scored a touchdown yet.
You know what I want him to learn, though, is the word forward. It was hilarious. I was reading tweets. He thinks forward is initially backwards. I mean,
he flips himself Grand Theft Auto style when he gets in the car.
Hey, Deontay, go forward, dog.
No, you know what that is, honestly, Lance? It's teams know when you get beat by him, you're beat. And they're going to get him the ball the second that he gets beat. They throw him the ball that much. We've seen that over the last 2 years. They're going to throw come hell or high water to Johnson if he's open. So as a defensive back, instead of attacking the ball the way that they do, what they're doing is after he breaks and they see that he's going to catch the ball, they're squaring him up. They're not going straight at it because he comes back like that because he's going to fake you. He's going to swing around you. He's going to make a move with his feet. They're just staying disciplined and letting him run himself backwards. So they're using it against him.
Yeah.
And he's literally doing that every single time because he's not getting any yards after the catch. You can tell he's getting frustrated with that. There was a play, I forget which one it was, but he did a great job getting open. He caught it at about the 40-yard line. And you can see the defensive back hold up and then break down. Like he's going to sit there and now wait. Johnson's going to run this big U-turn. He went all the way back to like the 36 and then made a move, ran forward. I think he got about to the 39.5. So he lost half a yard and put the effort forward to try to make a play. He's just unable to do it. It's not working because they're defending against him now. They are aware of the discipline it takes to approach him, and they aren't going to let him shake free because he's great with the ball in his hand, but it's not working. I mean, part of the reason he doesn't have any touchdowns is because he isn't breaking anything.
And Double H is on fire today in the chat when he said that DJ must have been a nightmare to catch in flag football.
Yeah,
I mean, absolutely. He's the
watch
flag football goat.
Yeah, he is just phenomenally quick.
Can we say
he really is just great feet, great balance.
Can we say the float, like flag football and goat combined? He was the float. He was the float wide receiver.
It's not good. It's not good though when football fans start making comparisons to the guy on the team to a flag football player. It's like the Dree Archer All-Stars. Everybody was like, "Oh man, imagine Dree Archer in flag football." Why?
The Dree Stars.
It's like I get it. Yes, Dree Archer is terrified of being tackled, and he's not going to last in the NFL. We saw that pretty quickly into his career.
The Dree Stars. but big up to DJ though in the game. That's a big third down catch. That third down catch really sealed that game. Great throw, great catch, great execution. I mean, and just not to belabor the Trubisky thing, but that's a confident call. That's a confident call by the staff in that situation, going to the guy that they perceive as more than likely their number one receiver. You call that up, close the game for us. Go ahead and win it, big fella. And he did and made that play. On the defensive side of the ball, some things stand out as well. You can kind of flip the coin on some of the numbers that I presented before. But one thing showed up, and we have not seen in the last few weeks or seen consistently this year. Pass rush showed up. The pass rush made a flight to Carolina. 4 sacks, 6 quarterback hits. I believe they had a sack called back because of I think a offsides penalty on TJ Watt. They would have had 5, but it was good to see the pass rush show up. What's your thoughts on their ability to get after the quarterback today?
I liked what I saw from Highsmith today. He's the one who I think kind of stood out to me more than anything. Again, that goal line play that I referenced, incredible awareness and instinct. I think that if anything, Highsmith is showing how smart of a player he is. The film work is really coming out, and it seems like these specialty downs are where he makes his plays. He knew what play was coming. He was well aware of what was coming. They had a double team on him, and he split both of them and ran the play down in the backfield. Great goal line defense out of Pittsburgh today. I liked Ogunjobi's game. We talked about this a little bit off the air. The Steelers looked like they were switching into an overfront wherever it is that Carolina was, or however they wanted to line up. And Ogunjobi just ate that guard alive early on. They adjusted to it eventually, but I felt he keyed a pass rush, and that's the same type of role that Cam Hayward has been doing on his own for however long. We've discussed it ad nauseum. We're not seeing TJ Watt playing at 100%, but they're able to collapse inside, and it's opening stuff up more off the edge. And we saw fairly consistent pressure against a team that how many plays did they run? 46? Is that what you said? They were barely on the field. So it's 43. Not like
they ran 43.
This wasn't a volume stat game. What was their third down? Third down was terrible.
Their third downs, and we'll speak to it as well. And that was another number I wanted to jump to. They were only 4 of 11 on third down, 36%.
Steelers crushed them there. Specialty downs, they won. The 3rd and 8 quarterback sneaks inside the red zone. Still laughing about that. Steelers won that down too.
I thought that was Jeff Friday making that call.
Oh my God, that was incredibly dumb. It was just like, what are you doing? At first, it's like, do you think you're Joe Burrow, or are you just calling your own number here, Sam? We're 3rd and 8 inside the red zone. You're not able to run.
He did go to USC, so you gotta excuse him.
Sam Darnold is a moron.
You gotta excuse him for that. And Carolina only had the ball 23 minutes in the game total, so that was also impressive when you look at the pressure numbers. And in the game, and it took me a while. I gotta ask you, Claire. I need you to clarify something for me, Neal. So in the game, Cam had 1.5 sacks.
Highsmith had a sack. They gave him a half on that one. All right.
And TJ Watt had 1.5 sacks.
Yeah,
so
Watt
that's 3.5. So
half, wasn't he? Okay, yep. That's fair. That's good.
How do they define? So the other half sack was given to the team. So how do they do that? How does a statistician do that? Is it how? Because it's typically most of the times you'll see a half. Is it 3 people? Then it's not a half. It's not a like. How do they do that?
It's okay. A couple things with that. First off, I just have to say this because I'll show it to friends and they'll laugh. If you ever find a moment in like a movie where you're trying to distract somebody when you sneak around them, if I'm the person you're trying to distract, ask me about scoring and officiating types of things. I'll go for days on this. I have no idea why. I've never been one. I know a lot of scorers, though. I've written a lot of stories on them. I keep in touch with people within the league that do this stuff. I'm just fascinated by the process behind it.
But that's fine.
I got into a knockdown, drag out, like 2-week-long battle with a bunch of people over TJ Watt's non-sack against the Browns last year, explaining up and down why it wasn't. It would have been for the sack. If you guys remember that. It was against the Browns. Baker went down and TJ touched him, and they did not give him credit for the sack, which they shouldn't have. And there's a whole slew of reasons why. It was a fumbled snap, first off. That was really kind of the big thing. Everyone was comparing it to Michael Strahan and the fact that Brett Favre jumped down at his feet and let him sack him. That was a legitimate sack according to the scorebook. Okay, you have to call it something. They call it a sack because, well, it fit the rules of a sack. Watts did not. Point is, I went for literally 10 days arguing with people on social media about that. A half sack credit to the team is not common. I didn't know that they did that, and I'm already texting people wondering if that's going to stick. I think that's a mistake. Not a mistake. It just might be an original ruling. They'll re-review it. I'm curious if that stands, just because a half sack to a team is kind of weird. You wouldn't have a situation like that. The half sack, though, on Hayward and Watt, as I remember the play, and I don't have it in front of me, it was a fairly unique situation where if you watch it, they give a half sack when one player, let's say he gets there first and he's tying the guy up and another one comes in and takes him down. The determination of a half sack is whether the first player would have taken him down without the other guy coming in. They'll give the other guy credit because he is the one who physically put the quarterback on the ground.
Right.
That's a half sack. And I felt at the time, I even said this to myself, the Hayward and Watt sack was not that, because it literally seems like they both hit him at the same time, which, believe it or not, really doesn't happen all that often. Most of the time when you give a half sack between players, it's because one kind of has him and he's starting to go down and the other one hits him, but he's not. The quarterback isn't in a position when the second guy hits him that he's going to be on the ground. But the ruling is eventually the first guy would have gotten him to the ground. The second one just came and finished him off. That's when you give a half sack. Most often, though, especially today, because bonuses are given out for sacks, fantasy football points hang on sacks, they don't like to do a whole lot of half sacks. Most often when there's a scoring change following a week, they will take a half sack away from somebody and give it to somebody else.
But they won't alter the game book, will they?
Yeah, that's the scoring change that they'll make.
So, but will they like the game book that's published today, will they actually modify the game book? So if I look again on Thursday, they might do it. Okay.
Yep. It's possible. That's what they did with Watt last year. And the whole issue on that was, and I said this at the time, they gave Watt credit for the sack. And I said they're doing that because the game moves on and they have to mark something. What they do is they're scoring it and they'll make a determination and they'll flag it. And the league office will then look at it to make the determination. It's like, if that's the sack that breaks the sack record, they're going to want to look at it before they call it, because it's the worst. It would have been the worst sack of the year, just really lame. A quarterback who fumbles the ball and picks it up is a runner until they reset into like the most obvious passing motion of all time. Was it Baker? I feel like Baker wasn't the quarterback. It had to have been Baker. Oh no, this was against the Ravens.
This is the Ravens.
This was against the Ravens.
It was early in the game.
Huntley was the quarterback.
It was early in the game.
Huntley fumbled the snap. And then you get into the difference of what a fumble versus an aborted snap is. My thought was it was an aborted snap because it was a bad snap. Huntley picked it up and ran. The ball up at your face like this is a running position. It's not a throwing position. To throw, you have to be like Johnny Unitas Heisman Trophy throwing the ball. It's not. I know that Johnny Unitas is not the Heisman Trophy. I don't know why I said Heisman. Not that.
Heisman.
You have to reestablish yourself as a passer purely, and Huntley did not, according to the letter of the rule. Watt took him down, and it wasn't. I'm mixing these up. That's what it was. Baker ran at some point and dove down. He gave himself up. That's also not a sack. So, in this case, the game book I'm looking at, I'm not sure the one you're looking at. The game book I'm looking at has Hayward and Watt at 1.5 each. Highsmith with 1 and a team total of 4. So There wasn't a team half sack anywhere. But the half sack, I remember
that's 3.5.
It's 4 on the book that I'm looking at.
But then when you add up the sacks, it's 3.5.
1.5 is 3 plus 1 is 4.
Yeah. I did get a degree. That is 4. So
you're far more the mathematical mind than me.
Yeah, man. And I did mess that up because that's terrible. Let's switch topics completely because
that's terrible.
I did not add that up.
It brings up a weird point though, because that is possible to do, and that means it could have happened at some point, and they switched it. I don't know, but tell you what, because I don't want to drone on and on about this any more than I already have. We'll go back Wednesday and let you know whether or not they credit either Hayward or Watt with that sack. Don't think for 1 second the players and their agents do not get after the league intensely about this stuff. Okay, if TJ Watt at this point in a lost season, if he has a $500,000 bonus on him getting 12 sacks, his agent is going to fight tooth and nail to get that half sack taken off of Hayward's total and put onto his. They do that all the time. Okay?
And he better for that 10%.
And I don't blame him, but that's rightfully a half sack. I'm not a half sack fan, but that's rightfully a half sack.
Let me jump into one last number on defense, and I'm kind of embarrassed that I added that wrong. Maybe I'm just so happy that the Steelers actually got 4 sacks in a game that the euphoria made me mess up basic math. But one thing also that jumped out on the offensive side, I wanted to jump into this, but we didn't say it, so I'll just mention it real quick. They were 3 of 3 in the red zone. But on defense, they were 1 of 3 in the red zone. They held them to 1. And because
Great job in the
recently,
red zone.
recently, because that was the difference in this game as well, was their red zone defense. Because over the past few weeks, teams have been converting over 50% of their red zone attempts against the Steelers. Now, the Steelers typically don't give up a ton of red zone attempts, but you still want to be playing better in the red zone to prevent teams from scoring touchdowns. But let me jump into this one thing for my hypothetical, and big up to Robert Cotting. And Robert Cotting said he made a funny joke. We were talking about the flag football stuff. They will be playing flag football in the Pro Bowl, which is absolutely funny. It just makes
what they do anyway.
Yeah, it just makes the Pro Bowl even more funny. Like, they admitted that it's not football by making a flag football game. Anyway, but this is a good question. He posed this to you, Neal, and this is the hypothetical here. What are you going to do to Mitch if they win the next 3 games? So the Steelers are what now? 6 and
They are 6 and 8.
6 and 8. They win the next 3 games, because I think right now they're the 13th seed, whatever it is. But I think they're the 13th seed. I saw that on the map the other day. I was like, yeah, whatever is that? The 13th seed.
13 of 16.
He said, come on, man. It's like, I mean, I think he poses a good point in terms of a hypothetical. I mean, what are you going to do if Mitch and the Steelers win the next 3 games? You get 3 performances like this. The formula works. He takes care of the football. They win. They're 9 and 8. By chance, since it's a hypothetical, they make the playoffs. I think it doesn't change anything. I think them drafting Kenny Pickett first round is the answer. I think I don't think there's anything that Mitch can do
over the next before Mitch got on the field.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I don't think there's anything Mitch can do over the next 3 games to be the quarterback next year, but
of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I don't think it's a good question. What's your thoughts on what are you going to do if Mitch wins the next 3 games? Is Mitch guaranteed your backup? Is he your starter? What does that look like from a hypothetical perspective?
For me, those 3 games, as far as Trubisky is concerned, as far as Trubisky's position on next year's team is concerned, the only thing I am really digging into is if he gets hurt. The injury might impact something, but for me, what I am hoping, if I am Omar Khan, I have seen enough to say Trubisky's best value to us is that we essentially have him on a cheap franchise tag, one that we don't have to keep. Okay, so he's got a 1-year contract for $8 million base salary this season, which means it's with his bonus from last year, he's like 12, 13 in the cap, something like that. I can get rid of $8 million on my cap by cutting him. Then I don't have a backup quarterback. I need a backup quarterback. I can assume his play over these next 3 games helps his market value far more than it's going to do anything, to my opinion. Doesn't matter to me. He's not my starter anymore, but I still want him as my backup. I'm familiar with him. I'm comfortable with him. The medical staff knows him. The receivers know him. The offensive line knows him. People are comfortable with him. I'd like to have some continuity in my backup quarterback. I don't want to pay him $8 million on a 1-year deal. I'd rather pay him $12 million over 2 because I want continuity. I'm not in control of the market, but I'm pretty close to it, and I can determine what I could reasonably expect him to get offered. Reasonably, okay? If the Houston Texans go do something really stupid and trade the first overall pick in this draft and sign Trubisky to be their starter, there's nothing I can do about that. That's a weird situation. Good on Mitch Trubisky. I don't know what Houston's doing, but maybe take the controller away from them for a little while. You need to have, in my opinion, you need to treat your backup quarterback, especially when you have a second-year guy, as a top 20 roster position. So paying him $6 million, 6.5 maybe in average per year base salary makes sense. I'll give him some guaranteed, give him a bonus, whatever. Lock him up for 2 years. That's what I want to do. Where I sit, looking at the market, looking at who's coming onto the market, which is critical to all of this, and this is something people don't really want to look at. There are not many teams that are in need of a starting quarterback for next year. The teams that are drafting really high.
Yeah, they're drafting guys.
And there are a lot of really good quarterbacks in this draft. You are not treating Mitch Trubisky as option A when Bryce Young is available to you. Okay? You're just not. Even that Will Levis clown. I don't know why people think he's as good as he is. I'm taking him
throw
over
the ball
Mitch
50
Trubisky.
yards standing still.
Great. So whatever.
I don't know if you saw that video.
We'll get in. Oh, I hate those things with a white hot fury. It is this. I'll say this though. If you want to get into that stuff, I saw Joe Flacco playing in, I think, like a flag football type of game, some type of exhibition, pre-draft, back when they did these things. They definitely don't do them anymore. Flacco was a good 30 yards away, and there's this dude filming. Flacco steps back and just uncorks one down the field. They're playing on sand, and he's throwing at where this cameraman is in a live game. He wasn't trying to hit him. The receiver, like the ball went through the receiver's hands, and it hit the cameraman square in the chest. And you hear him make this noise, and he just crumples over. I would jokingly said before that draft, like, this video gets Flacco drafted in the first round because the force that's coming off of that ball from 30 yards away is like inhuman.
And Neal, his hands were big too.
Guy just has an absolute cannon of an arm.
And he had a cannon and he had big hands. Before we get out of here, there was one stat I wanted to just mention to give kudos to the Steelers defense. After a couple of weeks of really struggling stopping the run, Carolina only had a net 21 yards rushing, 16 attempts, 21 yards rushing, 1.3 yards per carry. And that's one thing that you can guarantee most cases, teams do not want to get destroyed on the ground. Like that's a sign of getting beat up physically, and really getting slapped around. And teams take that personally. And a lot of times you'll find that teams really do a good job of correcting their running game mistakes, because the running game, like anything else in football, it takes a total team effort to consistently stop the run. I mean, a lot of times 7 or 8 guys will do the right thing. One guy will miss a tackle, or one guy will lose contain. Yep. And it kind of makes it appear as if your entire run front is not performing, when that may not be the case. Several of those runs occurred against the Ravens last week, but great victory by the Steelers. Steelers come back, turn around on a short week on Christmas Eve. I'm sure we're going to have a show on Wednesday. Not sure. We'll work it out, see if we'll do something on Christmas Eve, maybe something very quick. But that should be a pretty good game against the Raiders, celebrating awesome. The 50th of the Immaculate Reception. I happen to have been alive when the Immaculate Reception occurred. I do not remember it, but you know, I was alive at the time when it happened. And but with that, man, big up to Kevin Motley. Thank you, sir. Here we go, Steelers.
To you, Kevin. Merry
Salute
Christmas.
Lance and Neal on the Great Show. Thank you. And as always, we're going to go ahead and conclude the show. And as always, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe.